What would you do if someone poured wine all over you in front of hundreds of people just because they thought you didn't belong? Would you yell? Would you cry? Would you walk away? One man did something different. Something that changed everything. Before we dive into this incredible true story, please hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Heartbound Stories. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from right now. The night started like a dream. Big crystal lights hung from the ceiling, sparkling like a million tiny stars. Rich people in fancy clothes stood around holding glasses of expensive drinks. Everyone was laughing, talking, and trying to look important. This was the Western Foundation Gala, the biggest party of the year where only the richest and most powerful people got invited. The room smelled like perfume and fresh flowers. Music played softly in the background. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of food that cost more than most people make in a week. Everyone there had money. Lots of it. And they wanted everyone to know it. Standing quietly near one of the tall windows was a man named James Carter. He wasn't trying to get attention. He wasn't bragging about his money or showing off his expensive watch. He just stood there, calm and peaceful, watching everything happen around him. James wore a simple black suit that fit him perfectly. His shoes were shiny and clean. His tie was straight. He looked nice, but not flashy. He didn't need to be flashy. James had been invited to this party because his company had given millions of dollars to help kids go to school all across the country. He cared about helping people, especially young people who needed a chance to learn and grow. But there was something else about James that almost nobody at the party knew. He was the owner and boss of Carter Defense Systems, one of the 5 biggest and most important defense companies in all of America. His company made special equipment that kept soldiers safe. Governments trusted him. Military leaders respected him. He was a very important man. But to Victoria Stone, none of that mattered. Victoria was the wife of Richard Stone, the billionaire who was hosting the party. She wore a dress that probably cost more than a car. Diamonds hung from her neck and ears. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. Everything about her screamed money and power. She walked through the crowd like she owned the place, which, in a way, she did. People moved out of her way. They smiled at her. They laughed at her jokes even when they weren't funny. That's what people do around the super rich. They act fake to stay on their good side. Victoria's eyes swept across the room, looking at everyone, judging everyone. Then she saw James standing alone by the window. She squinted. She didn't recognize him. She had never seen his face before. And in her world, if she didn't know you, you didn't matter. She walked toward him, her high heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. People turned to watch. Something about the way she moved told them drama was coming. "Excuse me," Victoria said, her voice sharp and cold. "Are you with the catering staff?" James turned to face her. His face was calm. His eyes were kind but strong. "No, ma'am," he said politely. "I'm a guest here tonight." Victoria laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that makes fun of someone. "A guest," she said loudly, making sure others could hear. "At a $10,000 a seat dinner? Really?" People nearby stopped talking. They turned to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. They knew something bad was about to happen. James didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, looking at her with those calm, steady eyes. And somehow, his calmness made Victoria even more angry. "You know," she said, speaking even louder now, "some people just don't know when they're out of their league. Some people should stay where they belong." The room got quieter. Even the music seemed to fade. Everyone was watching now. James finally spoke, his voice soft but clear. "And some people don't know when they're showing who they really are inside." Victoria's face went red. Her eyes narrowed. Nobody talked back to her. Nobody ever challenged her. She was used to people bowing down, saying sorry, running away. But James just stood there, calm as could be. That's when she reached for a glass of red wine from a nearby table. "You look thirsty," she said with a nasty smile. Before anyone could move, before anyone could stop her, Victoria lifted the glass and poured the entire thing right onto James's chest. Red wine splashed all over his suit, dripping down onto his shirt, onto his pants, onto the shiny marble floor. The room gasped. Actually gasped. It sounded like everyone sucked in their breath at the exact same time. Cameras flashed. Some guests had their phones out, recording everything. Others just stood there with their mouths open, shocked at what they had just seen. The wine kept dripping. Drop, drop, drop. The sound was so loud in the silence. Victoria stood there with a proud smile on her face. "There," she said, looking at the crowd. "Now he looks more appropriate for his real level." James didn't move for a moment. Wine dripped from his suit onto the expensive floor. Then, very slowly, very calmly, he reached over and picked up a white cloth napkin from the table. He wiped his hands slowly, carefully, like he had all the time in the world. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Then James looked directly into Victoria's eyes. His voice was low, steady, and somehow terrifying in how calm it was. "You just made the most expensive mistake of your entire life." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said those words like he was telling her a simple fact, like saying the sky is blue or water is wet. Then he folded the napkin, placed it gently back on the table, and turned around. His shoes made soft sounds on the marble as he walked toward the exit. He didn't look back. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked out with his head held high, wine still dripping from his suit, leaving behind a room full of shocked, silent people. Victoria stood there, still smiling, thinking she had won. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, her whole world would fall apart. She had no idea that the man she just humiliated was about to destroy everything she had. And she definitely had no idea that people all over the world were already watching what she did, their phones lighting up with the video, their anger growing with every second. The clock was ticking, and Victoria Stone's time was running out. While Victoria went to bed that night thinking she had put someone in their place, something else was happening. Something she couldn't control. Something that spread faster than fire. The videos were everywhere. People who had been at the gala posted what they recorded on their phones. Within minutes, the clips were on every social media site you can think of. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. The videos showed everything. Victoria's mean words. The wine pouring. James's calm face. His powerful warning. Everything. And people were angry. Really, really angry. By midnight, the video had been watched 10 million times. By 2 in the morning, 20 million. By sunrise, 40 million people had seen Victoria Stone pour wine on a man just because she thought he didn't belong. Comments flooded in by the thousands. People were calling her terrible names. They were saying she was a bully, a racist, a horrible person who thought she was better than everyone else. The hashtag wine and ruin started trending worldwide. Everyone was talking about it. But Victoria didn't know any of this. She was sleeping peacefully in her giant mansion, in her expensive bed, dreaming whatever rich people dream about. Richard Stone, her husband, didn't know either. He had gone to bed early with a headache, missing most of the drama at his own party. When Richard woke up the next morning, his phone was buzzing like crazy. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Text messages, emails, missed calls. Hundreds of them. His assistant had called 20 times. His business partners had sent urgent messages. Even his own mother had texted him 3 times. Something was very, very wrong. Richard grabbed his phone and opened it. The first thing he saw was a news headline with a video underneath. His stomach dropped. His face went pale. His hands started shaking. There, on his phone screen, was his wife pouring wine on a man at his own gala. The headline read, "Billionaire's wife caught in shocking act of public humiliation." "No," Richard whispered. "No, no, no." He watched the video. Then he watched it again. His heart was pounding. He felt sick. This was bad. This was really, really bad. He jumped out of bed and ran downstairs to his office, still in his pajamas. He slammed the door open so hard it hit the wall. "Victoria!" he shouted. "Get in here right now." Victoria came walking in slowly, still in her silk robe, holding a cup of coffee. She looked annoyed that he was yelling. "What's all this noise about?" she asked. Richard turned his computer screen toward her. The video was playing on repeat. "Do you realize what you've done?" he shouted. His face was red. Veins were popping out on his forehead. Victoria looked at the screen and shrugged. "Oh, that. It's being blown out of proportion. People will forget about it by next week. It was just some random man who—" "He's not some random man," Richard screamed, cutting her off. "That man you humiliated, that man you poured wine on in front of everyone, that man is James Carter." Victoria blinked. "Who?" Richard wanted to throw something. James Carter, the owner and CEO of Carter Defense Systems. The man who controls one of the biggest defense companies in America. The man who is currently reviewing our $1 billion contract proposal. The coffee cup slipped from Victoria's hand. It fell to the floor and shattered into pieces. Hot coffee spread across the expensive carpet. Her face went white. All the color drained out of her skin. "You're lying," she whispered. "I wish I was lying," Richard shouted. "I really, really wish I was." Before Victoria could say anything, before she could even think of what to say, Richard's assistant burst through the door. She looked terrified. Her hands were shaking. She was holding a tablet. "Sir," she said, her voice cracking. "I just got a call from the Pentagon." Richard's heart stopped. "And?" "The meeting scheduled for next week has been cancelled. They've removed Stone Aerospace from all current and future contract considerations. We've been blacklisted. Indefinitely." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Indefinitely. Richard's legs gave out. He fell into his chair, his head dropping into his hands. "My God," he whispered. "My God, what have you done?" Victoria just stood there, frozen, her mouth open, unable to speak. The assistant wasn't finished. "Sir, there's more. The stock market opened an hour ago. Our stock has already dropped 60%. Investors are pulling out. The board is demanding an emergency meeting. And the media is camped outside the gates." Richard looked up at his wife with eyes full of rage and despair. "You've destroyed us," he said quietly. "You've destroyed everything our family built for 3 generations. Because you couldn't control yourself for one night." Victoria's legs started shaking. She grabbed the desk to hold herself up. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know who he was." "That's the problem," Richard shouted, standing up so fast his chair fell over. "You didn't care who he was. You saw someone you thought was beneath you and you treated him like garbage. And now everyone in the world has seen what kind of person you really are." Meanwhile, miles away in Washington, James Carter sat in a quiet, simple office. He wore a fresh suit, perfectly clean. His face was calm, peaceful, even. Across from him sat a woman in a military uniform with lots of medals on her chest. She was a Deputy Secretary of Defense, one of the most powerful people in the military. "Mr. Carter," she said, looking at some papers on her desk. "We've reviewed the situation. Given the circumstances and the public nature of the incident, we agree with your recommendation." James nodded once. "Proceed with the decision, then. Stone Aerospace no longer meets the ethical standards required for partnership with the Department of Defense." "Understood," the woman said. She signed a paper and handed it to her assistant. "It's done." James stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and shook her hand. "Thank you for your time." He walked out of the building into the bright morning sunshine. No smile. No celebration. No jumping up and down. He just walked to his car, got in, and drove away. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't cursed. He hadn't made threats or demands. He had simply let the truth do what truth always does. It had set everything right. Back at the Stone Mansion, things were falling apart fast. By noon, the stock had dropped 73%. By 2 o'clock, major news channels were running the story non-stop. By evening, Richard Stone had resigned from his own company's board of directors, hoping to save whatever tiny pieces were left. But it was too late. The empire was crumbling. And Victoria Stone, the woman who thought she was untouchable, was watching it all fall apart because of one glass of wine and one terrible choice. 6 months passed. 6 long, hard months. The Stone family lost almost everything. Their big mansion was sold to pay the lawyers and the people who were suing them. Their private jets were gone. Their fancy cars were sold. Their yacht was taken away. All the things that made them feel important and powerful disappeared one by one. Richard moved into a small apartment in a quiet part of town. He stopped going to fancy parties. He stopped wearing expensive suits. He spent his days trying to rebuild something, anything, from the broken pieces of his family's business. But Victoria's fall was even harder. She became the most hated woman on the internet. Everywhere she went, people recognized her. They pointed. They whispered. Some even shouted mean things at her. She couldn't go to restaurants. She couldn't go shopping. She couldn't even walk down the street without someone taking her picture and posting it online with angry comments. Her friends stopped calling. Her invitations to parties stopped coming. The people who used to smile and laugh at her jokes now crossed the street to avoid her. She was alone in a way she had never been before. As part of a court order, Victoria had to do community service. 300 hours of it. The judge sent her to work at Hope Community Shelter, a place that helped people who didn't have homes or food or money. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, Victoria showed up at the shelter wearing simple clothes and an apron. She served food to people who were hungry. She cleaned tables. She washed dishes. She did work she had never done in her entire life. At first, she hated it. She felt embarrassed. She felt angry. She felt like the world was punishing her too much. But slowly, something started to change. She saw people who had nothing but were kind to each other. She met mothers who worked 3 jobs just to feed their kids. She talked to old men who had lost everything but still said thank you with real smiles. She learned that the world was bigger than fancy parties and expensive wine. Victoria looked older now. Her hair wasn't perfect anymore. She didn't wear makeup every day. The diamonds were gone. The designer clothes were gone. But something in her eyes was different. Softer, maybe. More real. One Thursday evening, Victoria was serving soup to a long line of people. Scoop. Or smile. Next person. Scoop. Or smile. Next person. She had gotten good at it. Then the shelter door opened and someone new walked in. Victoria looked up and her heart stopped. It was James Carter. He was wearing a nice suit, but not too fancy. He was carrying a big box. Behind him, workers brought in more boxes, all marked with the logo of Carter Defense Systems. James was there to deliver a donation. New computers, tablets, educational software, things to help people at the shelter learn new skills and find jobs. The shelter director was shaking his hands, thanking him over and over. Mr. Carter, this is so generous. You have no idea how much this will help our families. I'm glad to help, James said simply. Then his eyes moved across the room and landed on Victoria. Time seemed to freeze. Victoria's hands started shaking. The ladle she was holding rattled against the pot. Her mouth went dry. She didn't know what to do. Should she run? Should she hide? Should she say something? But James started walking toward her. Thep, thep, thep. His shoes made soft sounds on the floor. Everyone in the shelter seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them. Victoria put down the ladle. She took off her plastic gloves. Her heart was beating so fast she thought everyone could hear it. James stopped in front of the serving table. He looked at her with those same calm eyes from that terrible night. "Hello, Victoria," he said quietly. "Hello," she whispered back. Her voice was so small. How are you finding your new role here? He asked. Victoria swallowed hard. She wanted to make an excuse. She wanted to say it wasn't her fault. She wanted to defend herself. But she didn't. Instead, she told the truth. I'm learning, she said. I'm learning what service actually means. What it means to help people without expecting anything back. What it means to be humble. James nodded slowly. Good. Keep learning. There was a long silence. Victoria knew she had to say it. She had been thinking about it for months, practicing it in her head. But now that he was standing in front of her, the words were hard to find. I'm sorry, she finally said. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. For how I treated you. For how I treated everyone. I was wrong. I was cruel. And I'm sorry. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then another. James watched her for a moment. His face didn't change. He didn't smile. He didn't look angry. He just looked at her like he was seeing the real her for the first time. You should be sorry, he said calmly. What you did was terrible. It hurt me. It showed the world something ugly. And it cost your family everything. Victoria nodded, more tears falling. I know. But, James continued, don't waste the lesson. Don't waste this time. Don't waste what you're learning here. Pain can make us bitter or it can make us better. You get to choose which one. Victoria wiped her eyes with her sleeve. I'm trying to choose better. Good, James said. Then he turned to walk away. But he stopped. He stood still for a moment, his back to her. Then he looked over his shoulder. You said something to me that night at the gala. Do you remember? Victoria's stomach twisted. I said a lot of terrible things. You said I didn't belong there. That I should stay where I belong. Victoria closed her eyes, ashamed. I remember. James turned around to face her one more time. His voice was soft but powerful, like thunder in the distance. You were right about one thing, Victoria. She looked up, confused. What? I didn't belong there, he said. Not with people like you and your friends. People who judge others by what they wear or what they look like. People who think money makes them better than everyone else. He took a step closer. I didn't belong there because I belong somewhere higher. I belong with people who know that true power comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. I belong with people who understand that respect isn't given because of money. It's earned by character. Victoria stood there, frozen, as his words sank in like stones in water. You thought I was beneath you, James said quietly. But I was always above it. Above the games. Above the cruelty. Above the need to make others feel small to feel big. And with that, James Carter turned and walked toward the door. Victoria watched him go, her hand covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But these were different tears. Not tears of self-pity. Tears of understanding. Tears of change. The door closed behind him, and he was gone. But his words stayed. They would stay with Victoria for the rest of her life. 1 month later, something unexpected happened. James Carter held a press conference. News cameras filled the room. Reporters sat with notebooks ready. Everyone wondered what he would say. James stood at a podium, calm as always. I'm here to announce the creation of a new foundation, he said. It will be called the Stone Foundation for Human Dignity. Reporters gasped. The Stone name. He was using the Stone name. This foundation will be funded entirely by the assets forfeited from Stone Aerospace, James continued. Its mission is simple, to teach business leaders about respect, equality, and ethical treatment of all people, regardless of who they are or what they look like. He paused. We will train CEOs. We will educate executives. We will make sure that what happened to me that night never happens to anyone else. Not in boardrooms. Not at galas. Not anywhere. One reporter raised her hand. Mr. Carter, Why would you use the stone name for something positive after what happened? James smiled for the first time. Because I don't believe in destroying people forever. I believe in transforming pain into purpose. The stone name represents a lesson we all needed to learn. Now it will represent the change that comes from learning it. The press conference was watched by millions. The video went viral, just like the original one had. But this time, people weren't angry. They were inspired. They saw a man who could have stayed bitter but chose to be better. A man who could have sought revenge but sought redemption instead. A man who understood that real power isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about raising everyone higher. At the shelter, Victoria watched the press conference on the old television in the break room. When James announced the foundation's name, she covered her mouth and cried. Not from sadness. From gratitude. He could have erased her. He could have made sure no one ever spoke the stone name again. But instead, he transformed it. He turned their shame into a tool for change. That's when Victoria truly understood what James had tried to teach her that night. Dignity isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't pour wine or throw insults. It simply exists, solid and unshakable, like a mountain that doesn't move no matter how hard the wind blows. Years later, Victoria still volunteers at that shelter. Not because a court makes her. Because she wants to. She trains new volunteers. She mentors young people. She tells her story to anyone who will listen, not to make excuses, but to teach the lesson she learned the hard way. And sometimes, when she serves soup to someone who looks tired or lost or forgotten, she remembers James's words. I belong above it. And she hopes that one day, she might belong there too. Not above other people, but above the ugliness. Above the hate. Above the need to feel important by making others feel small. That's the real ending to this story. Not revenge. Not destruction. Transformation. Because the most powerful thing you can do to someone who hurt you isn't to hurt them back. It's to show them who you really are when the wine stops dripping and the cameras stop flashing. It's to stand tall, speak truth, and let dignity do what dignity always does. It wins. Every single time.